Thanks both for your time. I know this is a borderline obsession for you, this particular area. Criticism for Greg Hunt over this, because people are saying, well, people will delay now, they'll just wait for another vaccine. What did you make of what he had to say there?
I think people looking for any excuse will take it as a green light to go, well, I've got it from the health minister directly that if I wait, there will be something that I think is better, although all the science points to the fact that the efficacy of both the vaccines is incredibly comparable, and even the rate of the blood clot concern around AstraZeneca is nominally nothing compared to just the normal rate of getting a blood clot if you go on a long haul flight. So on the one hand, I agree with the critics that this is mixed messages, and those who are looking for that particular message will take it and run with it, but hopefully it won't have a seeding effect across the whole community.
I guess that's a difficult part. He's saying, hey, we've got this other vaccine that everybody some people think is a much better option, but also trying to get people to get the vaccine now. I get the sense that people want it now regardless. You can tell them what you want, and there are people that will want it later regardless, and there's a big group in between that are sort of hedging their bets.
Yeah, I mean, he has to say that for the under 50s, because the under 50s can't get AstraZeneca. So there's got to be some kind of message for them. But as Claire says, the problematic nature of those comments is that the over 50s know they can wait as well. So it's a tricky one. He can't win either way.
Your paper had the latest study on vaccine hesitancy, which, trawling through various opinion polls over the past few months, it's a bit hard because some of the questions are asked differently around how sort of negative and how positive people are about it. But it did appear to show a growing group in the reluctant camp overall. What did you make of that?
Yeah, it's concerning. I think the big question is, to what extent is this down to government messaging? To what extent is this down to delays in the rollout? And I just see a growing concern there that at what point does the government explain to the Australian population, this includes state governments, that once we reach a certain percentage, a bit of virus circulating is fine. What we haven't been told, as far as I can see, what is that point where actually a bit of virus circulating is okay, because we can't stay locked down forever.
Yeah, well, that one was interesting because I feel as though the Prime Minister sort of walked back. He's talking now about, when he's asked about this, every loss of life through COVID is a tragedy. That's true, but so is every loss of life in a car accident from other elements. It's about still a communal aspect of risk without always looking at the individual.
Yeah, I think the government have hamstrung themselves a little bit, because a lot of those, well, all of the stage 3 trials for any of the vaccines were very rightly focused on, is it going to, in and of itself, be safe, but also stop you from dying? And we know
getting really sick was always the metric.
Both those things are, it is safe to take, and you will, it has a 100% efficacy rate against very serious, life-threatening COVID. Having said that, a lot of those studies were done at a time when the variants of concern didn't exist. And right now, there are a number of studies being done on transmissibility, how it is affecting certain variants. And I think I read what the government are doing is not wanting to lead out in front of the results from those studies, a lot of which are sort of due around July, August. The problem is they haven't figured out how to effectively communicate to people that regardless of that information that is yet to come, there's still a massive imperative to get the vaccine now, because what if we get to July, hear that these vaccines are good with variants, or they are good at stopping transmission, and we still have this huge hesitant population that hasn't...
Yeah, or it comes here and we've waited and not rolled out AstraZeneca to other populations, even though at that point you can't click your fingers and make a decision. But you're a bit more bullish around hesitancy or lack of hesitancy, and it is interesting to look at the reasons. Only 4% still are in the so-called no-vaxxer area, but a huge percentage of people want more information, want to see what happens. And if the rollout happens and everything, it goes essentially without too many more major incidents, people just slowly file over into the pro column is the hope.
Yeah, there's a lot of evidence out there that people are most convinced by either their own local GP or by people that are close to them, family, friends, colleagues, neighbours, who obviously as people around you get the vaccine and you see that it's fine, that enables you to get the information that maybe you feel you can't get at the moment. That's not to say that the government shouldn't be putting more effort into getting that information out there, but I think a lot of the hesitancy studies at the moment get really murky around the questions they ask when you consider the fact that half of Australia roughly cannot get a vaccine because they are under 50.
Yeah.
So when you're asking people, are you hesitant or not? And people are saying, oh, well, I haven't even really had to think about it because no one's told me that I can get it yet. It kind of skews that result, I think.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting point. So a lot of people are seeing this still as glass half full. Speech from Penny Wong regarding China, critical of the Chinese Communist Party, but accusing the government of essentially fear-mongering for domestic use, political use. What did you make of this?
Yeah, I think it's the strongest Labor has gone yet on departing from the government on how to handle the relationship with China. Now, I put this to Penny Wong yesterday, that you are declaring the end of bipartisanship because you're saying words matter a lot in foreign policy, and she's right, they do, and you're saying that Labor fundamentally disagrees with the government on how they are conducting themselves rhetorically. So it is a big shift.
Not any of the things they've done on Huawei, on have an inquiry and so on, but how they do it has been...
Yeah, that's all. So she's saying the structural stuff is all bipartisan, but words matter so much in foreign policy that we are now calling the Prime Minister out. I think that's significant. I think it was a substantial speech, and half of it was very critical of the Chinese government under Xi Jinping. And it was fascinating, some of the insights she went into. She said, this isn't just a great power flexing its muscles, this is different. This has an ideological dimension that's unlike anything we've seen in our lifetime. It was really interesting stuff. Now, but the politics is interesting. Her office dropped out this speech, only one half of the speech, the half that was critical of the government. We got none of that in the version that was dropped out. Now, she obviously, and Labor obviously, wants to send that domestic political message that the government's stuffing the relationship up. Where I sit, I kind of go, this is a good, substantial speech. Why wouldn't you drop the whole thing out? Why do you only want one half of that message out there?
So, I mean, is that fair enough? We know so often excerpts are put out there, and that's the element a government or opposition wants in the brightest lights, right?
Yeah, you see it all the time. They'll give you parts of an announcement or the speech that refers to things we already know, and then the next day there'll be something in there that's new and exciting. The idea, I think, being that you get 2 days' worth of coverage instead of one. But on an issue like this, if your argument is around communication and presenting a holistic picture of your opinion on something as inflammatory as the kinds of things potentially that Penny Wong was saying about China, it doesn't bode particularly well for your own point, which is that, well, we think that there are certain things that need to be said in a certain way. We'll criticise the government because we don't think they're right, but we'll hold out actually telling you how we would say it, which, to be honest, all those talking points were not dissimilar to some of the things that the government has said on some of those points.
Just finally and briefly, thought really interesting, we're getting this sort of distilling of the debate, Labor readying to maybe lop off the most generous part of income tax cut phase 3, but maybe keep a low and middle income tax offset. What do you think of that strategy?
I think if they were in a more match fit ready position, that's a fight on taxes that is a really valid one to have. I also think the government is absolutely prepared for it. And the reason they're being so kind of cagey, well, potentially the reason Labor's being so cagey around it is because I don't think they've quite picked how to argue when they know that the government will come back and say, well, this is a tax on aspiration. You want to earn $200,000? Well, Labor will tax you more if you do. I don't think Labor have figured out how to have that fight yet, even though they're edging closer to it.
The tricky part for the government, they'll have to convince everyone the low and middle income tax offset is a double tax cut. It is. Stage 2 is the same thing, but people are getting used to Lamito, as it's known, because it keeps getting extended.
Yeah, I mean, Labor hasn't made any decision yet because they don't know what strategy they're going to bring into the election. Elbow was there in 2006-07 under Kevin Rudd, where he attacked the coalition from a point of economic kind of conservatism, said this reckless spending.
Profligate.
Yes. Yeah. And he's clearly considering going with that attack line, and this is related to that because we're being more responsible. Now, whether that works in the middle of a global pandemic where Australians probably understand that a whole lot of money has needed to be spent I'm not sure the jury is out, but they're considering that.
Anthony Galloway, Clare Armstrong, thanks for your time.